Hi, I'm Tiffany, and this is Towering TBR. Today is the first day of the Magical Readathon, and I am going to be vlogging the experience and letting you know how my reading is going. So the first book that I started with is Heaven's River by Dennis E. Taylor. This is the fourth book in the Bobaverse series. So it's going to be a little bit hard to explain, but in the first book, Bob is a human and his consciousness gets uploaded into a software program where he is able to replicate himself and build spaceships and help humanity move on to other habitable planets and moons. And yeah, he just keeps replicating, and they traverse this wide solar system and meet other sentient life aliens. And yeah, so in this fourth book, how it started so far is one of the clones named Bender, I think went off to explore space in the first book, and he hasn't been heard from since. So the Bobs decide to try to retrace his steps and basically figure out what happened to him. So they have gone off into this far solar system where Bender was last known to be, and they find his ship, but the computer part that holds Bender is missing from the ship. And they find this big superstructure and start learning about it and think that maybe Bender is in this other alien structure. And that's about it so far. There has been some foreshadowing now that the clones are in like their 20th or 30th iteration. The clones are not very similar to Bob any longer. As they got cloned, there was small variants, and over a large period of time, there are Bobs that actively disagree with other Bobs. And that, I think, is going to have an impact on what they do in the future. But right now, they're looking for a clone that they haven't seen since book 1. I'm about 80 pages into it. It's a fairly chunky book, but I'm enjoying it. It's probably not the smartest thing to start with a 600-page book, but it's due at the library soon, and so I had to prioritize it first. I also picked up The Chalkman by C.J. Tudor. I'm only about 40 pages in, but so far it's got 2 timelines. It's about this kid, Eddie, and there are timelines in 1986 and 2016. And back in 1986, he was 12, and he had this kind of group of friends, and it opens with an accident at a carnival that injures a girl, and he and a teacher go to her aid and help her. And then in the current timeline, he is willing to meet up with one of his friends, part of that group, but the other friends are very upset about it. They are no longer friends because he drove drunk and got into a car accident, and one of the friends was paralyzed. So they don't speak to him anymore, but he is reaching out to Eddie for, I don't know. We don't know the reasons yet. But I'm liking both books so far. There's definitely a good amount of intrigue, and the chapters are fairly short, which helps me just keep reading. So that is my first update. Yeah, I will update you when I've read more. in the last clip, I am reading The Chalk Man for for alchemy, the Q level prompt. And I know that I need to get the O as well, but as long as I read all of them, the order doesn't really matter. So I've read a bit more of The Chalk Man, and something that happens when I read a dual timeline is happening. I greatly prefer one timeline over the other. In the 1986 timeline, when they're all kids, they've just gotten chalk and have started leaving each other secret codes, although we've already seen that be misused by one of the friends' older brothers who wanted to hurt Eddie. There's also a bunch of foreshadowing in here that one of the members of the group, Nikki, is possibly being abused. And right now it's hinting that the albino teacher is possibly the culprit. And if that's true, that leads into a very tired trope of, somebody who looks different is the villain. And I really hope that's not the case. I'm hoping he's a red herring, but that's where it feels like it's going right now. Heaven's River, I've read another 80 or so pages, so good chunk of the way through now, and it's exciting. The Bobs. Oh, I was gonna mention this is for the prompt artificery for the O level, because of the artificial intelligence. But anyways, the Bobs have found this mega structure in which there are sentient beings living there, and they decide to create these, they're called Mannies, but they're basically like an artificial interface that is designed to look like the native inhabitants, and they basically go undercover to spy on them and to see if they can figure out what happened to Bender. The factions are definitely getting more and more extreme. More Bob clones are experiencing what is called replicant drift, which means they're further and further away from the original Bob. And they're starting to see a real difference between what they call biologicals and the artificial intelligence. And now other humans who are rich enough are becoming able to have their own artificial existence after death. And there's concern from the humans that this is going to destroy the way of life. And yeah, it's surprisingly quite political, and I'm enjoying it quite a lot. I think I've given the first 3 books either 4 or 5s, so still enjoying it, and we'll definitely keep you updated. I will say I also just mood read a graphic memoir as well, but I didn't grab it, so hold on. Last night I read RX by Rachel Lindsay. This is a graphic memoir about the author's experience being involuntarily hospitalized in a mental institution. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and during a manic phase, she quits her job and cuts off all of her relationships, and so her parents decide to commit her. And quite honestly, she's still quite angry about the experience. Her artwork is quite like a newspaper cartoonist, which makes sense because she is a cartoonist. But I thought the story was pretty good. I don't know why I'm adding books that are not on my TBR, except for I was in the mood for it, so oh well. But I think I give this 3.5 stars, and I thought it was really interesting and insightful, and I really liked how she incorporated the psychiatrist's notes of what they were witnessing happening with her, and then how she was interpreting what was happening to her. There was quite a large disconnect between the two realities, and it was a interesting read. So, yeah, so I'll check in tomorrow and let you know how the rest of my reading's going.
1986. A policeman came round to our house. We'd never had a policeman in the house before. Up until that summer, I don't think I'd ever seen one up close. This one was tall and thin. He had a lot of dark hair and a face that was sort of square. He looked a bit like a giant piece of Lego, except he wasn't yellow. His name was P.C. Thomas. He peered in the box, took it away in a bin bag, and put it in his police car. Then he came back and perched awkwardly in the kitchen while he asked Mum and Dad questions and wrote things down in a small, spiral-bound notebook.
I read some more of The Chalk Man, and we now have 2 bodies. I have to be very vague because you don't want to know a whole lot of the mystery element of a mystery book. But yeah, still preferring the 1986 timeline. In the 2016 timeline, someone is missing, and I don't really care. Like, that sounds harsh, but I'm like, no, get back to the Chalkman stuff, because that's what's fascinating. So my other book, Heaven's River, is so much better. Like, right now, I would probably, it's on par to be a 5. I'm anticipating that there could be some issues with the ending, because they're not his strong suit. But, yeah, the Bobs are undercover, learning about an alien species. It's really funny. Like, I've laughed out loud a few times, and I'm just really enjoying it. We're getting to know some new characters that had, you know, very small roles in the previous books, but now they're coming more toward the forefront. There's still a lot of political unrest, and they're sending some strong signals that something is going to happen. We just don't know what yet. So, really enjoying this, really loving this. The Chalkman, I don't know. So, I should have just DNF'd this. I'm gonna give it 2 stars because it wasn't inherently a bad book, but I didn't really like any of the characters. I didn't find some of their motivations to be believable, and yeah, I didn't care about most of the 2016 timeline really at all until the ending, obviously. So, yeah, glad that's done at least. First book checked off for the list. And I'm still continuing to read Heaven's River. I'm about 140 pages from the end, and so I'll probably update you tomorrow about the conclusion. But I'm loving this. I laugh out loud. It's kind of a dorky sense of humor, but I just love it. So, yeah, this is going really well. I also picked up a graphic novel called Snapdragon by Kate Lee, and it is a middle grade magical realism graphic novel that is just so sweet and wholesome. It's about Snapdragon, and she discovers some baby possums and decides to rescue them, and then she takes them to the old witch in her town, and they form this friendship by taking care of the baby possums. And it's cool how they're connected in other ways as well. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars, and I think it would be a really great addition to anyone who wants to read middle grade graphic novels. I think I'm going to check in one more time tomorrow, hopefully after I've finished Heaven's River, and then that will be the end of this vlog. It's gone by really fast. So I hope everybody else is having a good magical readathon and having a good reading experience as well. Check in one more time. Bye. I finished Heaven's River and I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was really fast-paced, lots of fun, and actually a pretty good ending. I could see why people might not like it, but for me, I found it quite satisfying. So, to sum up, I read The Chalkman, which I gave 2 stars. Heaven's River, I gave 5 stars. RX, I gave 3.5 stars. And Snapdragon, which I gave 4 stars. So overall, a pretty good reading week. I have now crossed off 2 out of my 8 prompts, which means I'm right on schedule. Next week is the Women in Translation Readathon, and so I'm going to be picking up Tears of Amber by Sofia Segovia, which is translated from the Spanish. The Property by Rutu Modan, which is translated from the Hebrew. And I'm also squeezing in my library hold that just became available, The Book Eaters by Suni Dean. This is not translated, but I am really excited to get to it and just picked it up from the library. So, yeah, that's what I intend to be reading next week. I hope everybody's having a great readathon, and yeah, I'll see you next week. Bye.